Okay, hello students. I am going to tell you now about the case study, which is your main readiness to practice essay. It's called the People and Environments activity, and I'm going to try to briefly describe, very briefly, what the activity is, because there's lots of detail in your course syllabus about this. But the essay is very much linked to, again, an experiential exercise. So essentially there are about 8 different scenarios. Each one of you will be put in a group and you'll be given one scenario. That scenario may be, for example, an adult with learning disability, a homeless couple, older adult in the community who has particular needs, an adult with mental health needs. It could be young parents, an unaccompanied asylum seeker, a family where there's domestic violence as a feature in their lives. There's numerous scenarios. You'll be given one, and your task will be to undertake a series of experiential activities in which you'll initially discuss your thoughts and assumptions about that scenario. You'll then be asked as a group to go to that location. We'll give you the location and consider what it's like to be that person in that environment. You're then asked to consider the possible strengths and challenges in the scenario. It's not assumed that everything is negative for the individual or the couple or the family, whoever it is. However, you're asked to look at local resources and to develop your understanding of both your initial assumptions and then, from research, your understanding about particular areas of knowledge relevant to that scenario. So a simple example, one of the first scenarios relates to a homeless couple. If you've got that scenario, you'll have gone to the location, you'll have discussed the issues, you'll have considered what it might be like to be that couple. And that's an essential tip for this essay. What is it like to be, in this case they're called John and Claire, what's it like to be John and Claire who live in a doorway in Waterloo? What's their day like? What's their life like? What can you find out from research and from the knowledge base about homelessness, about young people, about other factors which may impact on them, such as their health, their well-being? Are they involved in substance use? If they are, what can you understand about that? What do you understand? What can you find out more about? You can apply the same kind of questions to an older man who's got a mental health need, who's isolated, who lives in a particular community, who may have particular support systems. But the task for you is to try to initially understand what's it like to be him in his life. His name is Percy, by the way. We're very fond of Percy. What's it like to be Percy? What are his needs, possibly, given the research that you can do about mental health, given his background and his age and the resources that are local to him? The actual essay asks you to address a number of criteria, and again they're written down clearly, page 8 of your course syllabus. The criteria are, I think the important thing actually, rather than just the criteria, is to read through carefully the paragraph that describes the essay, because it says very clearly the focus of the task is on identifying areas of knowledge relevant to a specific service, user or carer situation, exploration of anti-oppressive practice and professionalism. That's the overarching theme that you need to keep in mind as you approach the essay. The criteria then ask you to look at relevant knowledge areas, a critical evaluation of those and their relevance to the case scenario. So if we go back to Percy, relevant knowledge areas may relate to older men and mental health, black men and mental health, because he's from an African Caribbean background. And how do you relate any of that material and knowledge to his particular circumstances in his local community? You're asked to critically appraise the application of anti-oppressive practice to that scenario, and then to think about, and this is a criterion that people really struggle with frequently, so you need to think about this number 3. It is a reflective analysis of the particular demands this scenario might raise in relation to professionalism for the individual student. So I would say a key element here is, first of all, to define what professionalism is. We've talked about that in a couple of lectures already. You can think about the level of expertise and values and knowledge and power and authority that come into professionalism. So thinking about whichever scenario you're working with, how does that scenario highlight areas that you might need to develop in relation to your professionalism? For example, did you have assumptions about black mental health? Did you have assumptions about men or gender? Did you have assumptions about homeless people? Did you have big gaps in your knowledge? Did the research highlight gaps in your knowledge? What we found some years is that students have actually recognised that they had lots of negative assumptions, particularly about homelessness, for example, or perhaps learning disability. One of the scenarios requires you to think about an adult with learning disabilities and their wish to be involved in a relationship, an intimate relationship. So for some students, they found that a challenge. That's the value of this experiential exercise. You can really explore those issues, discuss them, think about your own gaps in knowledge and your own gaps maybe in terms of your personal experience, your values, and your thinking about social work generally. The final criterion requires you to think about the types of resources and policies relevant to the needs of the service user. So again, if you look at whichever scenario you're required to discuss and work with, you can look up what policies are relevant to that. And you've got a great link there to your social policy lectures and to the research that you'll do as a group. I think the only other thing I would say about this essay is that you very much get out of this exercise what you put into it. In your groups, you'll be required to work as a group to deal with any challenges that arise, but also to maximise your strength from that group of people. You can share tasks, you can go off, do more research, bring your ideas back and discuss them further. And you can look at the essay collectively, but you must write your own essay with your own writing, your own use of literature and your own learning. And that's what you will achieve good marks for. I think that's probably it on that essay.